Thank you very much, Laskin here. So, Minister, ask question the status of the affordable childcare scheme and if you'll make a statement on the matter.
Thank you, Deputy. There are a couple of other PQs. I propose to take PQs 34, 46 and 58 together.
Agreed.
Okay. I'm delighted to report positive progress in relation to the development of the Affordable Childcare Scheme and to confirm our plans for the scheme to launch this October with payments flowing from November. The launch of the scheme, as I've indicated, will alter the landscape of childcare in Ireland. It will provide financial support for parents, establish a sustainable platform for investment in the childcare sector for decades to come, and crucially, allow us to continue to invest in giving our children the best start in life. Following on from the enactment of the Child Care Support Act last July, detailed secondary legislation and policy guidelines are now being finalized. Our IT development contractor, Codec, is working with officials from DCYA and Pobble to develop the scheme's supporting IT system to ensure it will be available on schedule. The project is complex, it's challenging, but a rigorous project management methodology and strong governance structures are in place to manage it. In December, I signed regulations which will provide for the first time for the registration of school-age childcare services with TUSLA, and these regulations will come into force on the 18th of February. This means that school-age childcare services will be able to participate in the scheme from the beginning. It's a very significant change. An information campaign for parents and the public will commence in the near future. This will run alongside of comprehensive training and information supports for childcare providers and other key stakeholders, ensuring that everyone has the opportunity to be well prepared in advance of the scheme's launch. From March, my department will also launch a comprehensive communications campaign which will advise parents and guardians how they can avail of the scheme and the levels of subsidy to which they could be entitled. This is important to do. The campaign will run concurrently with a campaign for childcare providers to answer their queries on the scheme and provide training to prepare them for operating the scheme in October. Under measures included in Budget 2019, I was pleased to have been able to further advance the scheme by raising the upper and lower thresholds for income-related subsidies. These increases will poverty-proof the scheme for families on lower incomes, allow more families with higher incomes to access subsidies under the scheme, and to ensure that an even greater number of families overall will now benefit from the scheme once it is launched. Of course, there's a lot of work to do between now and October. Next, to have the Affordable Childcare Scheme up and running for parents. I will continue to work intensely with my department and Pobble to have the scheme ready and properly for proper functioning. It's an exciting development. I think it will make a real difference to children, families, parents, society, and our economy.
First, Supplementary Deputy Smyth.
Thank you very much, Minister. That's all very welcome, Minister. As we know, childcare costs have been crippling and continue to be crippling for parents right across the country, with spending up on 35% and probably more than that too. I think we're one of the most expensive countries in the world in terms of childcare costs. Could you, just to make it a little bit more localised, have you any statistics or figures on, we'll say, creches, the uptake of it in Cavan Monaghan for the scheme? And just, can you give us some indication of the appetite, if you like, with childcare providers for it? You did talk about communications, which is welcome. I think that's very important that both parents and childcare providers are fully informed, and particularly the parents, because as we know, they're all so busy with their own lives trying to keep on top of their mortgage payments and their jobs and everything else. But what form of communication is that going to be? Is it social media? Is it through the local radio media? I think that's important. You also talked about the training that you're going to provide, that this coming on stream as part of the scheme. Perhaps you could extrapolate a little bit more on that for us. Thank you.
1 minute.
Oh, thank you. Okay, let me just take a couple of those. Yes, in relation to your first issue, it's still the costs of childcare for many families, you know, are exceptionally challenging. I am well aware of that. And even though, as the deputies know, we've gotten a significant investment over the last couple of years, we started from a low base. It's just, As simple as that, I think. As well as, let me say one other thing, I think too, is that, excuse me, we've been conscious too as well that the need for the investment, not only to ensure that it's affordable, but the need for the investment in order to ensure that we have high quality, which of course then has to do with, so a lot of that has to do with what we're able to pay our great childcare providers and professionals. I don't have any information specifically in relation to Cavan Monaghan, but I certainly will look up that for you and get back to you should we have any. Because I think you're asking a question about in terms of the future and the appetite for providers. Generally speaking, though, my understanding is that there's a great appetite for it, though people don't necessarily have to sign up for it, but there's a great appetite for it because it will enable ultimately great ease in terms of the administration of it from a provider's perspective and a way of, I suppose, understanding and signing up your children from a parent's perspective.
Deputy Rabbitte, number 58, and I'll give you a supplementary then. Deputy Rabbitte.
I also want to actually ask again in relation to what role the city and county childcares are going to play in the communication of ensuring the support for the parents, but also supporting the providers. And now the fact that we have morning session breakfast clubs, after schools, sessional and full day, like the amount of information that will have to be brought to everybody, that level of information, I am sure that the city and county childcare will have a huge role to play on it. But also, Minister, in relation to the ICT and the rollout of the affordable childcare scheme, if everything fits a box, that's perfect. But where we have the exceptional cases, will there be training in relation to that? And I can talk about, say, somebody gets a particular illness and the mum is out of work and they would normally have been paying up to that. Will we have those scenarios as part of the presentation? And what support level will be to deal with those exceptional cases?
Okay, thank you. First, may I say just one more thing in relation to, I think, questions you asked earlier, Deputy, and also Deputy Smyth there. In terms of the amounts of money and the investment, when we have the Affordable Childcare Scheme, and we have the ease of the ICT and all that that's part of, it will be much easier and straightforward to actually increase investment for families, to make changes in relation to thresholds, whether they're at the lower or the higher end, because it'll all be streamlined into one way of looking at a family's income in relation to their children and what supports they need. So we're also building a platform where it gives it a lot greater ease for the investment and the policy decisions in terms of increasing the lower and the higher. Secondly, in terms of the information campaign, and again, Deputy Smyth also asked about that. Yes, of course, again, the county and city childcare committees will be involved, but in light of your questions, Deputy, I'm going to go back and ask just a little bit more detail in relation to that. They would be, I think they're at the coal face. There's be lots of different ways, whether it's social media. We did this once before. It'll be similar to you saw it everywhere, I think, in terms of the information. And we need to, and in terms of your last question, I think in terms of the training, especially with providers, okay, you've got the ICT, but my understanding is there's always an opportunity for, in the specific difficult cases, that we will have people in the department on standby in order to support them.
First supplementary from Deputy Smyth and then
Apologies.
Deputy Rabbitte.
Minister, again for the information you provide. Could I just ask you, in terms of the scheme, because the feedback that we would be getting, particularly from child care providers, across Cavan Monaghan, and my own colleague Deputy Anne Rabbitte has been to Cavan to meet with some of the childcare providers. The absolute, I suppose, heartache in terms of the administrative end of all of these schemes, and I suppose it has become very burdensome and cumbersome for the childcare providers in terms of the amount of paperwork. And I would have got feedback in terms of absolute frustration and that they don't actually get to do the job that they want to do, which is to provide the childcare, because their time, their energy, their hours are so much taken up by bureaucracy. And I fully endorse, checks and balances being kept on anything. Could you talk a little bit about this morning about the bureaucracy that maybe and you did say in your opening remarks that there's an ease to all of that, perhaps for childcare providers, which would be very welcome. But I think this morning what childcare providers would want to hear is, what the expectation is going to be from their point of view for the new scheme.
Okay.
Rabbitte, you can put your supplementary and then there'll be one response from the Minister.
All right, and I'm going to take it from the parents' point of view, Minister, that the exception exceptional cases, again, I want to go back there, that there would be a comfort, and it's part of the affordable childcare scheme, that where exceptional cases would happen, that it would be streamlined between the parent making communication with the provider getting onto the city and county childcare, and where is that going to be logged for the funding, and where is it going to be assessed, and does it go through the ICT system, or does it go through a paper base, or is it the city and county childcare that would make that application? I suppose I'm looking at it from the parent's point of view, that God forbid something was to happen, the unforeseen pops up, and you can't afford to make that payment to childcare because of whatever reason may be. But 35% of your income, if you can have it supplemented or supported, the mechanism for availing of it.
Final response.
Okay, thank you. Just in relation to the first set of questions from Deputy Smyth, absolutely, the intention is that there will be an easing of the bureaucracy. That is a significant aspect of the establishment of this scheme. Will it happen all at once? No, probably not. No. Are we preparing for it? Yes. Are we preparing for the transition? Yes. I think, as the deputies both know, that this in terms of in relation to my own department, over the part of the investment has been to get more people there. We have a bigger team who's been working very closely with all of the providers, as well as people throughout the country and researchers, to try to get this right, to think about everything and to prepare. And so with the streamlining and especially through the ICT system, ultimately people will need to learn how to operate that, and that will take some time. I think the deputy is aware of the fact that that we have continued to invest to support, though, the past kind of bureaucracy, and have continued to increase paying providers with monies by way of recognizing that. And sometimes those were difficult fights with the Department of Public Expenditure, though I did win some of those. I think your questions are good, Deputy Rabbitte, in terms of if things change in terms of parents' circumstances, how is it that they would cope with that? I think those are good questions. I'm going to assume that both the county and childcare committees will be there to support the providers. Of course, the providers will be there first, but I think it's a very good question. I'm going to bring it back to the department too, just to think about how to
move on to the next